Hi, 5th grade. Today we're working on day 2 for our ERQs in math. We are working on dividing decimals. Let's get started with our question. Hero's family lives 448 kilometers from the beach. Each of the 5 adults drove the van an equal distance to get to the beach. Calculate how far each adult drove. If each adult drove the same distance back home, how far did each person drive all together? So when I'm looking at this from my DWB, I've already set it up for you. I saw the word calculate for what it wants us to do. And what it wants us to do is calculate how far each adult drove. There's 2 parts to this though. We need to calculate how far each adult drove to the beach, and then it also wants us to calculate how far each person drove all together. So right here we see that 448 divided by 5 is going to give us how far they each drove to get to the beach. But the question states that they also drove the same distance back home. So we would take the quotient from above and we would multiply it by 2. So let's go ahead and get started on that. We need to do 448 divided by 5. And remember, we work with D, M, S, B. Divide, multiply, subtract, and bring down. So we need to cover up all our numbers underneath the bracket except the first one. We need to figure out, can 5 go into 4? No. We move on to our next one. Can 5 go into 44? Yes, it can. I'll give you a couple seconds to figure out how many times can 5 go into 44. You should have chosen 8. Now we need to multiply. 5 times 8 is 40. Time to subtract. 4 minus 0 is 4, and 4 minus 4 is 0. We don't need to do anything there. We need to bring down our 8. Now we dance back to the beginning and divide again. 5 can go into 48. How many times? You should have chosen 9. 5 times 9 is 45. We need to subtract. 8 minus 5 is going to give us 3. 4 minus 4 gives us 0 again. We don't need to do anything with that. We have a remainder, and we know now that decimals, you don't need a remainder. There's something you can do to make sure you get a better answer or a more accurate answer without having a remainder. What can you do? You should add a decimal point 0 to your dividend. We know that we need to raise the roof on our decimal point, so we put the decimal point into our answer, and then we forget about it. What do you do with the 0? You need to bring down your 0 into where your remainder was. Dance back to the beginning, and it's time to divide again. 5 can go into 30. How many times? You should have said exactly 6, which means that 5 times 6 gives you 30. 30 minus 30 is 0. Do we have anything to bring up? Do we have anything to bring down? You have 89 and 6/10 as your answer. Remember, if you're working on this and you ever come across that you don't get a 0 for the remainder, you keep getting a different answer and you keep having to add the zeros, you only have to go until your thousandths place, 3 numbers after the decimal. You don't have to keep going on and on and on because some numbers do not end. So you do not need to worry about that. You just have to go to your thousandths place. Today we were lucky enough that we ended in our tenths. The 0, we got an even number, a number that worked, and we did not have a remainder for too long. We're not done though, because we have 89 and 6/10. That's how far it took them, or how much it took them to drive to the beach. We need to figure out if they drove to the beach and they drove home the same distance. How far are they going to drive all together? we need to multiply this by 2. Two times 6 is 12. Make sure you carry. 2 times 9 is 18. Plus 1 is 19. Carry to my 8. 2 times 8 is 16. Plus 1 is 17. How do I figure out where I am putting my decimal point? When we multiply decimals, we need to make sure that all our numbers were to the right. We multiply as usual, and then we count how many numbers come after each decimal point.